Hello, thank you for joining me on my channel. On this quick tutorial, I'll show you how to do a French seam. A French seam is where the raw edges are all enclosed within the seam. It's a really nice way to finish your garments, but it is time consuming, and generally you tend to see it more on more premium garments or on something like a sheer fabric, like a chiffon or organza, where you don't want to see something like a overlocked edge. You may also want to use the French seam if you don't have access to an overlocker and you don't want to zigzag your edges, but just be mindful that it is a little bit tricky to do this around curved edges. So it works really well on straight seams, and it will take double the amount of time because essentially you are stitching in the same spot twice. To begin with, put the wrong sides of your fabric pieces together. Normally, you would put the right sides of the fabric piece together, but for this method, you start off with the wrong sides together. Now, French seaming is a great method, but it does take twice as long, as essentially you are, instead of doing one seam, you will be doing two seams. So to start off, you need to do a seam which is around 0.5 centimeters or 1/4 of an inch away from your raw edge. Now, carefully, taking your scissors, you can trim off some of this excess fabric. This will help to give you a very narrow French seam when you're finished. If you don't want to trim this, that's okay. You will just have a wider French seam inside your garment. Also, by trimming this, you can take off some of those little frayed edges, as we don't want them poking through. When you normally sew, you finish and start your seams with a back stitch. However, if you're using a sheer fabric like an organza or a chiffon, you may want to avoid the back stitch as it might chew up your fabric. So instead, you can just tie knots at the end of your seams. Now, you will want to press this seam flat. And then fold along your seam. And just with your fingers, just neaten up this edge. So you just want to get that seam perfectly on that edge so it's nice and sharp. And again, give that a little press. So now this is the wrong side of your fabric. Now you want to sew around between 0.5 and 0.75 centimeters away from this edge. It depends on how narrow you want to make your French seam. You also need to be mindful that it can't be narrower than the width of the excess fabric that you have that will be trapped inside this seam. So once you've stitched along this edge, take your iron, open out your fabric and iron this seam allowance towards the back of your garment. Normally you would be ironing your seam allowances open, but in this case, because it's all sewn together, you iron towards the back of your garment. And then just turn it over and just have a quick check to make sure that you don't have any raw edges or any frayed threads coming through this seam. If you do, simply just take your scissors and give it a quick trim. However, be really careful because you don't want to accidentally snip into your fabric. And there you have it, a beautiful French seam.